Hello, today I'm going to discuss the issue of whether China has manipulated its currency in the recent trade war. So, this presentation is divided into 4 parts. First is the motivation, second is the legal issue, third, evidences, and the final part is my legal opinion. So let's start with the motivation. So starting from July 2018, there has been the trade wars. Let's say the US imposed tariff on China exports, and China retaliates back also by imposing tariff on US products. In August this year, US has just announced 10% tariff on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. Let's say after the 10% tariff, China has allowed the Renminbi to decline 7.6% in 4 months around mid-year 2019, so that the previous exchange rate of, let's say the historical rate is around 7 yuan per $1, and this exchange rate is not maintained anymore. US Treasury has recently labeled China as manipulating its currency. However, IMF considers US Treasury decisions not sensible at all. In addition, China's central bank claimed that the current exchange rate just reflected the fundamental given the recent price war. And you may wonder what actually happened, and was China at fault and manipulating its currency. So let's talk about the second one, the legal issue. There are 2 regulations that I want to focus. The first one is 2015 Trade Enforcement Act. This act lays out 3 criteria so that the country who is deemed to manipulate its currency must satisfy of them. First, $20 billion bilateral surplus with US annually. Second, large overall current account surplus, above 3% of country GDP. And I've heard the news that they have lowered the criteria to 2%. The third one is persistent one-sided intervention to depreciate the currency. So the first criteria, the bilateral surplus. Let's say for many years, yes, China has the surplus from USA because China has exported a lot of goods to United States. The second one, the current account surplus. So by looking at this one, I will say that no, the China was not manipulating its currency, because let's say even though they have lowered the criteria to 2%, but the China current account surplus is around 1.6 to 1.8% of the GDP. And for the third one, the persistent one-sided intervention. This one is the most debated one in order to consider whether the China has manipulating its currency. So let's say one example is after adopting floating exchange rate in July 2005, yuan appreciated to 7 renminbi to US dollars. And this is one counter example to show that the China was not at all engaged in one-sided intervention to try all the time to depreciate the currency. Let's focus on the second regulation. So the second regulation is called the Omnibus Trade and Competitiveness Act of 1988. The Secretary must consider whether countries manipulate the rate of exchange between their currency and United States dollars for purpose of preventing effective balance of payment adjustment or gaining unfair competitive advantage in international trade. So this one is designed to prevent the war, let's say where the countries take turn in depreciating its currency in order to boost the export. And this one, the US Treasury has used this act in order to label China as the China has manipulated its currency. So let's go to the third part, evidences. Let's say what are the evidences showing that the China was not manipulating its currency at all. Since 2016, China monetary policy has been to prop up yuan value. And in 2018, Renminbi devalued only 4.8% to US dollar. So this one is another counter example to show that, well, the China did not try all the time to depreciate its currency and the magnitude is quite small. And also, because of China's slowdown and Trump's tariff, investors are encouraged to sell Renminbi. So this one is the claim, the support of the claim by the China Central Bank that because investors sell Renminbi because they expect the China losses from the trade wars. So this one is the reasons of why the China yuan has depreciated, and also to claim that it was not their intention to do so. Only one category of bilateral trade surplus is satisfied according to the 2015 Trade Enforcement Act. So look at this one. It implies that China was not manipulating its currency because it does satisfy only one of the three criteria in order to claim that China was manipulating its currency or not. And also, another claim by China Central Bank is that China can be adversely affected because of dollar-denominated debt, because China has held a lot of US government bonds. And if the yuan has depreciated, China has to face some losses of the capital gains because the yuan has depreciated and the return to the US bonds will decrease, and also the rising value of imports. However, what are the evidences in order to show that China was manipulating its currency? China's central bank operates in a different manner to most countries. China's central bank set a ban for exchange rate daily, but allows traders to trade within that range, and they use that trading activity to determine next day exchange rate. So the currency depreciation may imply that China wanted to ease some damages from the US tariff, and this one is the reasons why the US actually claimed that China was manipulating its currency. So, allowing the currency to depreciate to 11-year low means that China did break the promise in G20 summits in refraining from competitive devaluations and not targeting exchange rates for competitive purposes. And the final part is my legal opinion. So, to summarize my view, I would like to say that even though depreciation counteracts the damages from the tariff, but it doesn't mean that China has depreciated its currency just for the sake of this. So I think that the China did not really want to push the yuan down. So one evidence is that during 2003 and 2013, China consistently depreciated yuan by buying up a lot of US bonds. However, US complained at the time but did not declare China to be currency manipulator. So this one is the evidence showing that China was not manipulating its currency. And it is very likely that traders sell yuan in response of the trade war. And by nature, let's say the mechanism of the floating exchange rate, this counteracts the damages of US imposing tariff. So let's say the mechanism of the floating exchange rate will have some effects of counteracting some damages from the trade shocks. Let's say China faces a trade shock, so the trade surplus initially goes down, and in order to maintain that exchange rate, China has to increase their interest rate. So if China didn't do anything, the foreign countries will demand less yuan by nature, because China will be expected to perform worse because of the Trump tariff. So yuan can depreciate in response. And because of this depreciation, because investors do not want yuan as well in the past compared to the past, the China can export more. And this counteracts some damages from the 10% tariff that Trump has imposed in August this year. So let's say that the China did not try. So one possibility is that China did not try all the time to depreciate its currency. But this is one likely scenario that has occurred today. That even though China did not try to depreciate its currency, the currency, the yuan, will depreciate because of the investor demands goes down and because of the mechanism of floating exchange rate that makes the China less affected by the Trump's tariff. Thank you for listening to this presentation.